started to see the movie, we've come to realize that it's not as, overly positive. The reception isn't as overly positive.
Is it not the greatest comic book movie of all time, quoted by Tom Cruise and James Gunn himself?
Yeah. That's how much did they pay Tom Cruise for that little pull quote?
I don't know. Maybe Warner Brothers will pay for it. But wrapping up, Griff, man, this has been such a great. Again, I love talking to you about these films, man, and breaking them down. But getting down to the last nitty gritty of it all, Griff, and wrapping up with the ending of the movie, the post-credit scene, but also the cameos, Griff. And I'll run it down. I wrote it down in my notes here as far as the cameos that I remember off top. We talked about Jeremy Irons up top. I wouldn't say Ben Affleck was a cameo. Gal Gadot was definitely a cameo. But then as we pivot into this third act where Barry has to finally come to accepting his mother die, and we know that the young Barry doesn't want that, and then we get the reveal of Dark Flash. We get as the posters have been alluded to, worlds collide. This is where we get, and I definitely want to get your thoughts on the commentary of how it's distasteful, or could be distasteful for some. Christopher Reeves, George Reeves, Helen Slater, Adam West, Nicolas Cage, Griff, which that is a deep, deep cut for those that are very familiar with that piece to John Snepp. But and then we'll talk about George Clooney, and then of course Jason Momoa. Mm-hmm. The ending of the film, Griff, your thoughts on how it wraps up the story, the conclusion with the emotional beat with Barry saying goodbye to his mom, pivoting over to that scene of all the different cameos. If you feel like it was just fan service, distasteful fan service, and then your thoughts on, as we'll talk about, George Clooney, Griffin, coming up in this film, pivoting over to the post-credit scene. Take it away, man.
The ghoulish cameos first. I'm still not entirely sure. I'm of two minds. I was literally just talking about this with someone earlier today, because there's obviously the picture of Christopher Reeve going around as Superman. I hate it, and yet I've somehow rationalized why it kind of works for me. Yeah. Like kind of what I was talking about earlier. I don't think it's supposed to be something that's celebrated. And yet I know some studio exec was like saying that, oh, we need to throw all of these people in there because this is our No Way Home. Like, I know that No Way Home came out, and then they were like, oh, well, we got to put cameos in our movie because people want to see that in our movie. But there is something interesting about the fact that every single cameo during that scene is from an actor that has played the character that is now dead. Or it's, in the case of Nicolas Cage Superman, it's something that never happened. Feels like it's in line with that cautionary tale of trying to resurrect the past in order to like bring it into the forefront. It could be like, oh, this is really what you want. You want all of these possibilities. You want us to continue using Christopher Reeve as Superman. You want us to you want to see that Nick Cage Superman movie now. We're gonna throw it all together, and it's gonna be fucking abysmal and gross, and it's gonna just like completely obliterate any semblance of a thing that's going on here. And so on one hand, like I think it works in that regard because of how gross and off-putting it is. At the same time, the way that some of the cameos are shot look like they're supposed to be celebratory. And so there's a weird disconnect between what I feel like the intention is and the way that it's presented. On top of that, there's no reason that we should be using like CGI models of Christopher Reeve or George Reeves or the original actor who played Jay Garrick or Adam West, for a matter of fact. Like there are countless amounts of archival footage that you can use.
They have hundreds and thousands of hours of these actors.
That's what. That's what I'm saying.
Versus the CGI video game look.
Like if you already got the approval from the estate that they could be featured in this film, why did you not go and use that footage? And on top of like, there's especially with the Christopher Reeve one, because his death was so public and it's so just like tragic and all that. It's like, why would you do that? Like it. I don't understand. I really don't understand why they thought that was acceptable. Yeah. Like they're really completely unnecessary. And you could still end with the George Clooney one because that's fun and that's like really it's kind of like
we'll get to George Clooney.
Well, I want to get into that because that's one of the I'm shocked that I actually liked that one. But the Chrono Bowl ones were really, really bad. And then on top of that, like Nicolas Cage shot stuff for this, right? That's what Andy Muschietti said.
was able to work with.
Why did he look like a 3D model? Like that's
Griff, your guess.
If you're gonna have the actor shoot stuff, why not just feature him?
Again, it's still rendering, Griff. That's what I've been told.
It probably is.
I have no idea. It's going to be on the Blu-ray special features if those are still a thing in the future.
I genuinely hope that a remastered version of this film comes out where all of those cameos are just archival footage, and the Nick Cage one is genuinely just like him shooting the scene. I just it blew me away. Before we get your thoughts on George Clooney and Jason Momoa, to piggyback on your thoughts, I'm in two minds as well. Like, I've seen the online Discord. We're filming this on a Tuesday on the 13th, and a lot of people feel disgusted, and rightfully so. It's each year on night one to tell people how they feel. I am in the camp of, I get the idea. It is as I said in my first review, it's a love letter to DC. It's a love letter to what's come before. Again, as you mentioned, it plays into the idea of going back to the past and showing what the past was in order to move forward. But Griff, I'm 100% with you, man. You have all this archive footage of it, and not to bring in Across the Spider-Verse, but how they used, spoiler alert for that, the cameos of a Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. They use footage of their films. Could they just use a Christopher Reeve saving the cat from the tree, or Helen Sharon? Why couldn't they just use the footage versus what they decided to go with? It's baffling. Nick Cage, I got a good kick out of it. I don't know if the general audience might get that. It might be Googling after it. But for those that might not understand the significance of the Kevin Smith film that was supposed to be written and directed, Tim Burton with Nick Cage as the character, it never came to be. His hat knock on it, directed by John Schnepp, rest in peace. But I got a kick out of that. But like you, Griff, Nick Cage is still alive, Warner Brothers. And as Griff alluded to, they filmed the scene with him doing this. Why not just choose that versus the video game design? So I'm of two minds of, like, I get the intent, but I thought the execution was poorly done. What saved this kind of crazy head scratching moment was, again, the ending of Barry saying goodbye to his mom, saving his father. But then that leads us into the actual ending, which the first time I saw this, Griff, like 3 or 4 weeks ago, they cut off the movie when he says fuck, and then it just cuts off. We don't see George Clooney or Batman. So tossing it to you, Griff, what did you think before we get to the post-credit scene? George Clooney coming out of the car again. It is well documented that a lot of people do not accept George Clooney as their Batman with Batman and Robin. But to have George Clooney, I got the joke. I would have loved, and I know it would have never happened, but the Christian Bale of it all would have been so great to me because. Oh, no, I don't want them touching that. That would have made me mad. That would have been. Well, yeah. Wait, let me know, Griff. How did you feel about the George Clooney of it all? I know there was speculation months ago that it scooped. Some scoopers were saying that maybe this might be the DCU Brave and the Bold. Older grizzled Batman will be George Clooney, but I think James Gunn has debunked that. But did you get a good kick out of that? And then lead into your thoughts on the post-credit scene. I did not like it. Jason Momoa coming out of a bar drunk. I guess it's like, hey, we'll see you in December for Aquaman 2. Your thoughts on Mr. Clooney and your thoughts on that post-credit scene. Yeah, I loved it. When George Clooney comes out of that car, man, he's just walking. It's just like the presence of George Clooney. The charisma is crazy, man. I'll give him that. The man has swagger. He's a movie star, dude. That guy just has. I miss seeing him. Yeah, that's really what it was. I was just like, the gravitas, like the swagger, the movie starness that is George Clooney. God, please just let him play Danny Ocean for the rest of his life, please. So but also just like I thought it was funny, man. Like I don't know, like it is, like Barry changed something, and like he thought he could just change this one thing, and that nothing was gonna happen. But it's like, no, you put that can of tomatoes on the top of that shelf. This Batman is coming in, and you're gonna have to deal with it if you want your dad not to be in prison. It's a give and take, and so it's in line with the rest of what Barry has to learn, and it's like, what can you live with? I think that's a really funny terms of like sci-fi-ness. Like it's very like Planet of the Apes sort of thing. Like you think that you fixed everything, you get back, and it's like that was kind of cool. I really. And like George Clooney, of all the actors, like obviously makes sense. You can't really have Val Kilmer do it anymore. You don't touch Christian Bale. You just don't fucking touch Christian Bale. Michael Keaton already in this. Yeah. George Clooney is in the second Schumacher film, and I think those movies closely resemble what's going on here. On top of it just being like kind of like a funny little cameo, I just I don't know. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a funny stinger, and I'll say this: if George Clooney
do not say it.
was the Batman going forward in Brave and the Bold,
we talked about it. Griff starts from scratch. Leave the
yes. I mean, obviously, yeah, start from scratch. But like, I'm just saying, if they wanted to have him,
would you say it's George Clooney not from the Schumacher, but is George Clooney playing a different version of Batman that you're saying, or you would want George Clooney experiencing Robin and having Damian? You would want that George Clooney story from Schumacher to be the new DCU. This clarification.
Yeah. I don't know. I just the idea of George Clooney. George Clooney is a much better actor now than he was back when he was playing Batman.
100%. Yeah. And I don't even really blame a lot of that stuff. That was a lot of like the studio notes of like goofy, over the topness, the bat nipples of it all. Also, Jason Momoa, man. Did you care for that? I didn't really care for it, and I think I let some of the hype of like when Andy Muschietti said we have a couple more surprises. I didn't know. I was thinking in my head like, is it going to show maybe an inside of James Gunn's world? But am I missing something, Griff? It's Arthur. He's talking to Arthur. He's telling him what happened. He's drunk. He's still Aquaman, but and he passes out. And I don't know. I didn't really enjoy the post-credit scene. Did you? Am I missing something, Griff? Is it supposed to be something more insightful there? Is it supposed to set up Aquaman 2? That this is the Aquaman that might be? I don't know. What did you take away from the post-credit scene?
Yeah, the post-credit scene's a little weird because it feels like a joke that only makes sense if you've seen the end of the movie, which is why they didn't show it during the CinemaCon cut. Just kind of like, in all the worlds that we went to, you and I are the same, but there's like multiple different Batmen and stuff like that. Like, that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
I feel like you could probably take it as like those two are going to continue on into the DCU. Not necessarily that like the continuity has of like the past is going to be the same, but like those two guys can carry on playing these characters.
Only thing I took away, Griff, is again just knowing how the DCU have used Barry Allen and Aquaman so far. They've had this kind of big brother, little brother vibes from Justice League, and then we saw the joke in Peacemaker and joke in this film, The Mermaid, with which I will say the Back to the Future deep cut of Michael J. Fox not being Marty McFly was pretty funny. But I don't think there's much to take away from it. I'm sure there'll be thousands of videos exploring the possibilities of what this post credits can mean. But I think I don't think it's much of anything besides just a funny, like you mentioned, a joke. I think we've covered it. This film, top to bottom, from performances, direction, story, narrative, visual effects, what worked, what didn't work, and of course we talked about the ending here, Griff. Final comments, and we'll wrap it up, man. Is the next time we'll see the Flash, and in particularly, will it be played by Ezra Miller?
The character is obviously not on DC's slate for this first chapter of their universe. I think it might be a little bit Ezra Miller to reprise their role as the Flash if it is as popular with audiences as they seem to think it's going to be. And if it is, does that mean they fast track a Flash movie, a Flash sequel, and kind of work it into the current DCU slate? Apparently they have one written, or at least they have an idea for a Flash sequel. I don't know. Will we ever see Ezra Miller as the Flash again? That's the big question.
No, I don't really have one either. I mean, based on what we saw and when we're pre-recording this, Ezra Miller was at the red carpet and got a chance to speak to the press and had a moment to thank Andy Muschietti and all the people that helped them get to this point. But, Hollywood, Griff, as we all know, it's been well documented. It's about giving people second chances. And I know how a lot of people, and rightfully so, how they feel about Ezra Miller, and kind of just not even bringing up a whole nother can of worms of like how Jonathan Majors and how that situation's been handled versus like an Ezra Miller, how that's been handled. It's a deeper conversation we had, but we know one thing, Griff. Like I said, Hollywood is a very forgiving industry, and it's been well documented of a lot of actors making terrible, terrible, terrible mistakes, but yet getting the opportunities to continue to be in the household, in the zeitgeist of pop culture. So I'm in the camp, if I'm being honest, Griff. I want Ezra Miller to get as much help as they can need, because I do believe that people do deserve second chances, as this film kind of alluded to, but also just from a human perspective, if they put in the work to do right, to address the issues that they have committed, as well as the victims that have been affected by them, then I'm all about second chances in that sense. But that doesn't necessarily mean I want to see them playing Barry Allen again. So we'll see what comes of it, Griff. 70 to 80 million open weekend, which, who's to say it might not do more or do less, but we'll see what comes of it. But I think at the end of the day, Griff, as we talked about, fun film, great narrative, great performances. And I think as far as the DCU is concerned, with now Blue Beetle and Aquaman, it's a film that we can remember as one of the better ones moving forward. So
absolutely.
Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, actually, I want to pull up my ranking here real quick because I want to remember. I want to know where I have it on my DCU ranking. I mean, I think I definitely prefer the Snyder. The Snyder trilogy is those occupy my top 3 spots. But I think it goes for me. This is controversial. Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition, Man of Steel, then Zack Snyder's Justice League, then the Suicide Squad, and then currently I have the Flash about tied with Wonder Woman 1984. Which, you know, so I know some people don't really care too much for Wonder Woman 1984. I really dig it. And I think both that film and The Flash have the same kind of old school lightheartedness to them. This charm that I think is largely lost from comic book films these days. Just there's something old fashioned about how both of those films feel. And I really dug it despite the flaws. So yeah, one of the greatest comic book films of all time, definitely not, but it's a really solid comic book movie that's, I think it's better than most of the, you know, slop that we get, but that doesn't mean that it's like, you know, top tier, one of the best. It's just, it's really good.
I agree, man. And listen, Griff, I'm going to speak into existence, man. We got to team back up and maybe do a rankings of our DCU and compare our lists, especially with Blue Beetle and Aquaman coming out later this year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Griff, man, I really mean this to the core, man. It is always an honor and a privilege to just talk to you, whether it's DC, Marvel, likewise. Star Wars. You know, we've collabed a lot, man. Lovecraft Country, Mandalorian. I've had nothing but the greatest times with you, man. So I really appreciate you joining me today, Griff, talking about the Flash, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So, man, I'm so thankful again for your time, Griff. Hopefully we can do this in the future. And guys, as we wrap up, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit the like, hit the share, leave your thoughts of the movie once you've seen it in the comments. And of course, don't only support myself here at MovieFiles, but like I said, support my man Griffin, who is just awesome and is doing great things on this YouTube space. So again, for myself and Griff, we appreciate you, and we will catch you all on the next video.